in both India and Haiti, and so we welcome you to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And as with Representative Elsie, I'm honored to be part of this august group. We sat together as a unified body, House and Senate, a few years ago before this monstrosity ever occurred. We were with the Chief of Staff, Armed Chiefs of Staff. We were with Defense Secretaries, and we sat and we looked on the wall and we saw how Ukraine was bordered by three sides by Russian troops, and we did nothing. We didn't arm Ukraine. We didn't want to, quote, poke the bear. I pray that if the same thing happens with the Baltics, we'll have the fortitude that we don't wait for an action, that we prevent the action by arming the people, by coming up and not fighting a defensive war. It's so much that inaction led to a lot of action by Putin. I pray we don't make that same mistake again. And I think a lot of the things that, sadly enough, occurred in Afghanistan have led to the debacle today, led to the loss of 1 million lives that should have never happened. So if that ever happens, God forbid, I pray that who's ever in the administration to this point, to that point, prevents that from happening. I will ask this. Is there any public campaign within Estonia now, or any of the Latvian states, that is anti-Putin? Is it all just fear of what's going to occur, or is there any anti-Putin campaign?
Thank you for these remarks. First of all, I would like to commend the first part, is that we agreed in Vilnius 2 years ago the new NATO defense plans, and they were exactly based on the experience what we see now in Ukraine. And of course, you can imagine that for Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, we have a territorial depth like 200 kilometers. And the idea before was that, of course, if Russia will be aggressive and invade NATO and the Baltic states, then finally, of course, NATO will win the war victoriously. But the sad thing is that taking back the territories, there will be no Estonian, no Latvians, no Lithuanians left. So that's why we changed this strategy and also the plans. They are very good plans. But Russia must know as well, and they know, of course, that if the deterrence is not working, and I do hope that it will work, but if it's not working in the future, we will be ready from the first second to hit into the heart of Russia and take down all the targets which are supporting this kind of aggression. And this is exactly why we are now investing heavily to our defense capabilities regionally, but of course together with NATO and also with allies as US. So this is the understanding. And why I'm talking about this is that actually people of Estonia, we are not afraid of Russia. We don't fear. We have no fear. We have been living there 10,000 years, and we have planned to continue for the same long time. And we just know what may come. This is a big difference. If you know what may come, then you're not afraid. You're just preparing for that. We are very practical. So that's why we decided in the beginning of 1991, after regaining our independence, two things. First, we fight back this time. We didn't do it in 1940 and 39. And the second, that we never be alone again, because at this time we declared that we are a neutral, peace-loving country. But actually, Stalin and Hitler, they didn't care about that. So we didn't fight back, and we were alone. We wanted to get good relations with Moscow, with Berlin, with Paris, London, and Washington at this time. But now we made our choice. Never be alone again, and we definitely fight back. And Russia should know that, whatever it costs. And it's not based on fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rao, let me ask a question. Getting into the mind of Putin, getting into the mind of Stalin, the other despots that we've seen in the world, how do you change that man's mind? Because I would submit that while many criticize the president for trying to do what he did, he tried to give him an out. I don't know. That's not my understanding. I would just love to know, how do we give Putin an out to back out? Because he's not going to do it, seemingly not going to do it on its own. Interested in your thoughts.
There was a wonderful description of Putin in the early days after the full-scale invasion, reported in I think it was the Financial Times, where a reporter asked a senior Kremlin source close to the president who the President Putin was relying on to go to war, who he was listening to, and he said he had his two primary advisors, Ivan the Terrible and Catherine the Great. Oh. So there is, I think, an imperial quality to President Putin, and we've seen it on display in the now famous, infamous interview he did with Tucker Carlson, where he went off on a long historical soliloquy. The reports out of the meeting in Alaska are similar, where apparently President Putin began with a lengthy historical excursion, talking about Yaroslav the Wise and other figures of Russian imperial past. And so there is sort of a grandiloquence, a sense of historical boasting that is, I think, at the core of Putin. But beyond that kind of ideological tenor, I do think he responds to basic cost-benefit analysis. And if the pain and suffering imposed on the Russian people is sufficient to threaten the political foundations of his rule, he may be forced to reconsider and come to the table. And I think both the Pearl system of weapons support, financed by the Europeans to Ukraine, and the recently announced Rosneft and Lukoil sanctions, which take effect on the 21st of this month, so just in a few days, are both the military and economic prongs of an attempt to change the Russian calculus. Because to date, the president has sought to engage President Putin and President Zelensky. He sought to act as a mediator, bending in his kind of neutrality and mediation towards the Ukrainians, but nonetheless to mediate. And since I think he's been frustrated by Russian obstruction, by Russian inflexibility, he's now trying to change the calculations of the Russians by applying some pressure. And we'll see, as President Trump put it, when President Putin, or maybe it was Lavrov, the Kremlin spokesperson, scoffed at the sanctions announcement. We'll see if he's still laughing in 6 months.
Thank you. I'll yield back.
And Senator Bo